The first thing I
This is a
noticed when I
test
pulled onto
recording
Maple
to
Ridge's main
demonstrate
street wasn't
professional
the snow
vocal
falling like
delivery.
powder sugar over the streetlights or the houses glowing warm with Christmas lights. It was how small everything looked. 3 years. 3 years since I'd driven down this road, and somehow the town had shrunk in my absence. Or maybe I'd just grown too big for it. My Tesla's GPS announced I'd arrived at my destination, but my hands stayed locked on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see it. 428 Birch Lane. The two-story colonial with the red door and the wreath my mother always hung too early. The house where I grew up. The house that threw me out. It was 6:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, 2025. The temperature display on my dashboard read 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to see your breath. Cold enough to remind me of another December night when it was 15 degrees and I had nowhere to go. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy. Why did I come back? My mother's email had been brief. Viola, please come home for Christmas. It's time. Love, Mom. No explanation. No apology for 3 years of silence. Just an invitation that felt more like a question mark than a period. I pulled my beanie lower over my dark hair and adjusted my mask. Not for COVID, but because the last thing I needed was to be recognized. Not tonight. Not before I was ready. The porch light flickered on. Someone had seen my headlights. No turning back now. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat and stepped out into the Vermont cold. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked up the driveway. Each step felt like walking backward in time. There was the maple tree I'd climbed when I was 8. There was the crack in the sidewalk from the winter of 2009. There was the doormat that still said welcome in faded letters. I stood there, hand raised to knock, when the door swung open. Phyla! My mother stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of the house. Isolde Moore looked older than I remembered, more gray in her light brown hair, deeper lines around her eyes. But her smile was the same. Uncertain, hopeful, guilty. Hi, Mom. For a second, I thought she might hug me. Her hands even lifted slightly. But then she caught herself, as if remembering we weren't those people anymore, the kind who hugged. Come in, come in. You must be freezing. She stepped aside, and I crossed the threshold into the house that used to be mine. The living room looked exactly the same. Same worn couch, same stone fireplace, same family photos lining the mantel, though I noticed my college graduation picture had been turned face down. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, half decorated, lights blinking in a rhythm I remembered from childhood. You made it! The voice came from the kitchen doorway. Maribel. He was 58 now, with silver threading through his dark hair and reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He wore slacks and a button-down, always dressed like he might need to meet a client, even though he'd retired from his accounting practice 2 years ago. His face, when he saw me, registered something between surprise and discomfort. Phyla. He didn't move closer. You're here. I was invited, I said quietly. Yes, your mother insisted. The words hung in the air like ice crystals. Your mother insisted. Not we wanted you here. Not I missed you. Your mother insisted. Mom jumped in quickly, her voice too bright. Well, let me take your coat. Are you hungry? There's so much food. I made your favorite. Well, I made ham. I wasn't sure if your favorite was still... Ham is fine, Mom. She took my coat with trembling hands, and I noticed the way she held it for a moment, like she was holding a piece of me she thought she'd lost forever. Maribel returned to the living room, settling into the armchair like a queen on a throne. So, Vela, what have you been up to? Still doing the computer thing? I work in healthcare technology, I said. Right. The medical startup. She said startup the way you might say hobby or phase. Mom mentioned you were consulting or something? Something like that. Dad moved to his usual spot on the couch, picking up the remote. Dinner's not for another hour. We're just watching some news. I sat on the far end of the sofa, as far from him as possible while still being in the same room. The cushion felt different than I remembered, or maybe I was just different. Mom bustled around, straightening things that didn't need straightening. "Can I get you something to drink, sweetie? Wine? Water? We have that sparkling water you used to like. Well, that you liked 3 years ago. I don't know if you still—" "Water is fine." An awkward silence settled over us, broken only by the sound of CNN murmuring from the TV and the distant hum of something cooking in the kitchen. Maribel swirled her wine. "So, where are you living these days?" "Boston." "Boston? That's nice. Expensive, though. How do you afford—" She caught herself, smiled. "Sorry, none of my business. It's fine." "Maribel just bought a new house," Mom said, eager to fill the silence. "3 bedrooms, completely renovated. You should see the kitchen." "Congratulations," I said to my sister. "Thank you. It's been a good year professionally. I made partner at the firm in September." "That's wonderful." Dad glanced up from the TV. "We're very proud of her. She's built a real career, stability, security, everything a parent hopes for." The implication was clear. "Unlike you." I said nothing. I'd learned a long time ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. Not because you couldn't win, but because winning didn't change anything. Dinner was announced shortly after 7. We sat at the dining table, the same table where we'd eaten 1,000 meals, had 100 arguments, and finally, 3 years ago, reached the point of no return. Mom had outdone herself. Ham, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, rolls. All the trappings of a family that was whole, when we all knew we were anything but. Bastian sat at the head of the table, as always. Mom to his right, Maribel to his left. I sat next to Mom in the chair that used to be mine when I was young enough to believe this family was safe. Dad carved the ham with the precision of a surgeon. "Isolde, this looks excellent." "Thank you, dear." Maribel loaded her plate. "Mom, you've outdone yourself." "Oh, it's nothing. Just nice to have everyone home." Everyone. The word felt generous, considering I'd been uninvited for 3 years. "So, Maribel," Dad said, "tell Vela about the Morrison case." And so it began. The dinner conversation that revolved around Maribel's accomplishments while I sat there like a ghost at my own family's table. Maribel launched into a story about a corporate lawsuit she'd won, something involving contracts and liability and a settlement that made the local news. Mom
My name
listened
is
with
Renata
rapt
Martinez,
attention.
and this is the story of how I
Dad
learned that
nodded
sometimes the
approvingly,
people who gave you life
interjecting
are the same
questions that
ones who
proved
try
he'd
to erase
already
it.
heard this story at least twice before. I ate my ham and said nothing. "The judge even complimented my closing argument," Maribel said, then turned to me as if suddenly remembering I existed. "What about you, Vela? Any exciting projects?" I set down my fork. "I'm working with hospitals on predictive algorithms, early detection systems for patient complications." Dad made a sound that might have been interest or skepticism. "Hospitals? That's ambitious." "It's what I do." He cut another piece of ham. "How many hospitals?" "Several." "Several." He repeated the word like he was tasting it, finding it lacking. "That's rather vague." "It's ongoing work," Maribel jumped in. "It must be hard, though, getting hospitals to adopt new technology. I imagine there's a lot of red tape, skepticism." "There is," I admitted. "And you're doing this freelance? Or is there a company?" "There's a company." "Oh, you work for a company. I thought you'd started your own thing." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Maribel knew exactly what she was doing, poking holes in my credibility with questions that sounded supportive but were designed to diminish. "I did start my own thing," I said calmly. "I work for myself." "Ah." Maribel nodded slowly, that smile still in place. "So it's more of a solo operation. That makes sense." "Something like that." Dad cleared his throat. "Vila, your mother and I have been concerned about your financial situation. Startups are risky. This is family time. I'll just be a minute." "Sit down." His voice had that edge that meant the discussion was over. I sat. The CNN anchor was back on screen now, her expression shifting to that practiced gravitas they use for important stories. "Coming up next," she said, "a special report on the healthcare breakthrough that's saving thousands of lives, and the mysterious founder who's been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. Stay with us." The commercial break started, an ad for luxury cars, another for arthritis medication. Maribel muted it. God, I hate these pharmaceutical ads. Does anyone actually— Unmute it, I said. She looked at me strangely. What? Please unmute the TV. It's just commercials. Maribel, unmute it. Something in my voice made her comply. The sound came back. Some jingle about living your best life. Mom frowned. Viola, are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. My heart was hammering against my ribs. My hands felt cold. In 8 minutes, maybe less, my entire family was about to learn the truth I'd tried to tell them 3 years ago, the truth they'd refused to believe, the truth that had cost me my home. The commercials ended. The CNN logo flashed back on screen. Welcome back, the anchor said. I'm Emma Rodriguez. Tonight, we have an exclusive report on MedPredict, the artificial intelligence platform that's revolutionizing emergency medicine in hospitals across America. Dad leaned forward slightly. MedPredict, I've heard of that. On screen, footage played of a bustling ICU, nurses moving quickly, doctors checking monitors. The overlaid text read, MedPredict, the algorithm that saves lives. For 3 years, Emma Rodriguez continued, the founder of this groundbreaking technology has remained anonymous, a ghost in the machine. But tonight, CNN can exclusively reveal her identity. My mother's hand went to her throat. The brilliant mind behind MedPredict, Emma said, is a 30-year-old woman from Vermont who built the first prototype alone, was rejected by dozens of investors, and eventually created a platform now used by over 400 hospitals nationwide. The screen changed. Now it showed graphs, success rates, statistics. The algorithm has an unprecedented 98.7% accuracy rate in predicting cardiac events, a doctor in Navy scrubs said on screen. It's detected complications hours, sometimes days, before traditional methods. I can say without exaggeration that MedPredict has saved hundreds of lives at our hospital alone. Dad's eyes were fixed on the TV now. Maribel had set down her wine. Mom's breathing had changed. The founder's net worth is currently estimated at $2.6 billion, Emma Rodriguez said, making her one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the United States. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Tonight, Emma said, CNN can reveal that the founder of MedPredict is— The screen shifted. To my face, a professional photo taken 6 months ago. My hair pulled back, my expression serious. The MedPredict logo behind me. Viola Moore. Time stopped. The clock stopped ticking. The Christmas music stopped playing. The whole world stopped spinning on its axis. On the TV, my image stared back at me, and at my family. Moore, originally from Maple Ridge, Vermont, Emma Rodriguez continued, has kept her identity secret to avoid media scrutiny and protect her team during the company's rapid growth. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a sharp crack, red wine spreading like blood across the boards. No one moved to clean it up. Bastian Moore stood up slowly, as if his joints had rusted. He stared at the TV, then at me, then back at the TV. That's you, he said. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I met his eyes. Yes. Maribel made a sound, half laugh, half gasp. This can't be. You? Me. On the TV, the segment continued. Now they were showing the Boston office, my team working at their desks, engineers collaborating, medical advisors reviewing data. According to sources, Emma Rodriguez said, Moore maintains 72% ownership of the company, which is currently valued at $3.6 billion. Her personal net worth is estimated at $2.6 billion. Mom whispered something I couldn't hear. The doorbell rang. No one moved. It rang again. Then someone knocked. Hard. Dad finally broke his gaze from the TV and walked to the window. He pulled back the curtain and went very still. There are news vans outside, he said slowly. 3 of them. More knocking. Ms. Moore, a voice called from outside. Viola Moore, this is Tyler Washington from CNN. We'd love to get a comment. Maribel stood up, her face pale. There are reporters on our lawn. Another voice from outside. Is it true you built the company alone? And another. Can you confirm you're worth $2.6 billion? The Christmas lights blinked red and green across my father's face as he turned to look at me. You're a billionaire, he said. On paper, I replied, echoing the words I'd said so many times to investors, to journalists, to Cole when he'd first shown me the valuation report. The TV said you saved thousands of lives. 10,000, give or take. The algorithm has anyway. Mom stood up shakily, her hand over her mouth. All this time, we thought. You thought I was failing, I finished for her. I know. More knocking, more reporters. Through the window, I could see phone cameras pointed at the house. Lights from the news vans painting the snow blue and white. Bastion Moore, the man who had thrown me out of this house on a snowy night 3 years ago, the man who had told me my dreams were impossible, stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't pride, it wasn't happiness. It was shock, complete, total, devastating shock. How? He whispered. I stood up slowly. My legs felt shaky, but my voice came out steady. The same way I tried to tell you I would, I said quietly. I built something that mattered, and I did it without you. The clock started ticking again. Someone outside shouted my name, and Christmas, as we all knew it, shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The doorbell wouldn't stop ringing. Ms. Moore, just one comment. Viola, over here! Is your family proud of you? That last question cut through the chaos like a knife. Is your family proud of you? I looked at the 3 people standing frozen in the living room. My mother with wine soaking into the floorboards around her feet. My father gripping the curtain like it might hold him upright. My sister staring at me like I'd just pulled off a mask to reveal a stranger underneath. Proud? They looked terrified. Mom finally moved, kneeling to pick up the shattered wine glass with trembling hands. I don't understand. When did this? 3 years ago, I said quietly. I tried to tell you. Bastion let the curtain fall closed. There are at least 20 people out there. Cameras. That man from CNN. I know. You know? Maribel's voice rose. You knew they were coming here? Tonight? I knew they'd moved up the announcement. I didn't know where I'd be when it happened. My phone buzzed again. Cole. I silenced it. More knocking. Ms. Moore, the public deserves to know your story. Dad's face had gone from shock white to an angry red. You brought them to our house. This circus. I didn't bring anyone anywhere. CNN found me. They found out I was from Maple Ridge. They did their job. Your job, he shot back, was to tell your family before you told the entire goddamn country. I tried. The words came out sharper than I intended. I tried to tell you 3 years ago. You didn't want to hear it. The room went silent except for the muffled voices outside and the TV still playing behind us. On screen, they were showing footage of a hospital in Denver, a doctor explaining how MedPredict had helped them reduce ICU mortality by 23%. Waisold stood up slowly, the broken glass cupped in her hands. You built that. All of it. You. With a team, but yes, I designed the core algorithm. The algorithm that saves lives, she whispered. That's the goal. Maribel grabbed her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Google says, oh my God, Google says MedPredict just closed a Series D funding round at a $3. $6 billion valuation. She looked up. Is that true? Yes. And you own 72%? Yes. She did the math in her head. Her lawyer brain couldn't help itself. That makes you worth $2.6 billion, yes, the reporters already said that. My sister sat down hard on the couch. I make $180,000 a year. I thought I was successful. I thought I was the successful one. The doorbell rang again, followed by a woman's voice. "This is Harper Bennett. I live next door. Girls, are you okay in there?" Mom's head snapped up. "Oh, God. Harper, don't open the door," Dad commanded. But Mom was already moving, stepping over the wine stain, hurrying to the entryway. She opened the door just wide enough for Harper Bennett to slip through before slamming it shut again. Through the gap, I saw camera flashes like lightning. Harper Bennett was a small woman in her 60s, wearing a parka over her pajamas and duck boots that tracked snow across the floor. Her gray hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes were wide with excitement. "I cannot believe this!" She grabbed both of Mom's hands. "Yesoldi, did you know? About Vila?" Mom shook her head mutely. Harper turned to me, and her face split into a huge smile. "Vela Moore! I just watched you on CNN. Oh, honey, I always knew you were special. Always. Remember when you fixed my computer when you were what, 13? I told your mother then, that girl is going places." "Thank you, Mrs. Bennett," I said quietly. "And now look at you, a billionaire, saving lives." She clapped her hands together. "Maple Ridge's very own genius. Oh, everyone is going to be so—" She stopped, seeming to register the tension in the room for the first time. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Dad said tersely. "Thank you for checking, Harper." "Well, I just wanted to. There are so many reporters out there, and I wanted to make sure you all were safe, and to say congratulations." "Huh," she beamed at me. "Your parents must be so proud." The words hung in the air like smoke. Must be, should be, aren't. "We're very surprised," Mom managed. "Surprised? Well, of course. Vila kept it secret all this time. That's so humble of you, dear. Not like these young people nowadays, posting every little thing online." Harper squeezed my arm. "Your grandmother would have been so proud. She always said you were too smart for your own good." Too smart for my own good. Yes, that had always been the family assessment. Harper finally left with promises to bring cookies tomorrow and warnings about the reporters. The moment the door closed, the fragile politeness shattered. "How long?" Bastian demanded. "How long what? How long have you been lying to us?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I never lied. You just never believed the truth." "Don't play semantic games. I'm not. 3 years ago, I told you I was building a healthcare AI platform. I told you I had funding. I told you hospitals were interested. What part of that was a lie?" Maribel cut in. "You made it sound like some small consulting thing. You didn't say you were running a multi-billion-dollar company." "Because 3 years ago, I wasn't. 3 years ago, I had a prototype and a dream and $500,000 in seed money. But you didn't ask me about it. You didn't ask how it was going or if I needed help or what my days looked like. You just assumed I was failing." "We assumed," Mom started, then stopped. "We thought. You thought I was wasting my life," I finished. "I know. You made that very clear." The TV continued its report in the background. Now they were interviewing a healthcare economist who was explaining MedPredict's market impact. Bastian grabbed the remote and turned it off with more force than necessary. The silence was worse than the noise. "I don't understand," Mom said softly. "If you were building something so important, so big, why didn't you tell us? Really tell us?" I looked at her, at this woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me to read, who'd kissed my scraped knees and made my favorite birthday cakes. This woman who'd stood in the doorway 3 years ago and watched me leave. "Do you really want to know?" I asked. "Yes." "Okay." I took a breath. "Do you remember December 24th, 2022? The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's face went pale. Maribel looked away. Dad's jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. "Don't," he said. "Don't what? Don't talk about it? We've been not talking about it for 3 years. Maybe it's time." "Vila, please," Mom started. But I was already falling backward in time, pulled by a gravity I couldn't resist. 3 years ago. December 24th, 2022. The snow had started that afternoon. big, fat flakes that turned the world soft and white. I'd driven home from Boston, my ancient Honda Civic chugging along I-89, my mind racing with possibilities. I'd gotten the call 2 days before, the call that changed everything. Ms. Moore, this is Richard Chin from Apex Ventures. We'd like to offer you $500,000 in seed funding for MedPredict. $500,000. It was nothing compared to what some startups raised, but it was everything to me. It meant I could quit my soul-crushing job as a junior developer at a healthcare software company. It meant I could hire a team. It meant I could turn the prototype I'd been building nights and weekends into something real, something that could save lives. I'd been working on the algorithm for 2 years. 2 years of teaching myself machine learning, of cold calling hospital administrators, of begging for access to anonymized patient data. 2 years of everyone, my boss, my coworkers, my friends, telling me it was impossible, that I was too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious. But I'd done it anyway. And now someone believed in me. I couldn't wait to tell my family. I'd arrived at the house around 6 p.m. Mom was in the kitchen making Christmas Eve dinner. Maribel was home from her law firm, already 2 glasses deep into a bottle of Pinot Noir. Dad was in his office, probably reviewing someone's tax returns even though it was a holiday. I'd run up the stairs to my childhood bedroom, the room they'd kept exactly as I'd left it, like a shrine to the daughter I used to be, and dropped my bag. Then I'd practically bounced down to the living room. "I have news," I'd announced. They'd all looked up, Mom from her cooking, Maribel from her phone, Dad from his newspaper. "What is it, sweetie?" Mom had asked. "I got the funding for MedPredict. $500,000. I'd expected, I don't know, excitement, congratulations, questions at least. Instead, there had been a long silence. Finally, Dad had folded his newspaper with deliberate slowness. "What funding?" "I told you about it last month, the venture capital firm that was interested in my healthcare AI platform. I thought that was just an idea you were toying with." "It was an idea. Now it's a real company with real funding and real investors who believe—" "Viola." He'd set the newspaper aside and stood up. "We need to talk." Those 4 words. We need to talk. Nothing good ever followed them. We'd all moved to the dining room. Mom had turned off the stove and sat down nervously. Maribel had brought her wine, settling in like someone preparing to watch a show. "This venture capital funding," Dad had said. "What are the terms?" "They want equity in exchange for the investment. Standard stuff." "How much equity?" 20%. He'd nodded slowly. "And what do you plan to do with this money?" "Build the company. Hire a team. Quit my day job so I can focus on this full time." "Quit your job." He'd repeated it like I'd said something in a foreign language. "Your job with benefits, with a 401k, with stability. Dad, this is the opportunity of a lifetime." "No." His voice had gone hard. "This is gambling with your future." "It's not gambling. I've spent 2 years developing this technology. I've got hospital interest. The algorithm works." "Do you have any idea how many startups fail?" Maribel had interjected. 90%. That's the statistic. 90% fail within the first 5 years. "I'm not a statistic." "Everyone thinks that," she'd said, swirling her wine. "Right up until they fail." I'd turned to Mom, hoping for an ally. "Mom, you understand, right? This is what I've been working toward. This is my dream." But Mom had just looked at Dad, then back at me. "Sweetie, dreams are wonderful, but you need to be practical. You're 27 years old. You should be thinking about your future, real security, maybe settling down." "I am thinking about my future. This is my future." Dad had leaned forward. "Viola, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to really hear me. This is a mistake, a massive mistake. You're going to take this money from people who will own part of your company, a company that doesn't even exist yet, and you're going to throw away a good job for it. It's reckless, it's immature, and I won't support it. I'm not asking for your support." "Good, because you don't have it." The words had hit like a slap. "Bastian," Mom had said softly, Maybe we should. No. He'd stood up. She needs to hear this. Viola, you have always been impractical. Always. Your head in the clouds, chasing whatever new obsession catches your fancy. But this is too far. It's not an obsession. It's a business. It's a fantasy. Healthcare AI? You don't have a medical degree. You don't have business experience. You have a computer science degree and some coding skills. That doesn't qualify you to revolutionize medicine. Each word had been a nail in a coffin I didn't know was being built. I have more than that, I'd said, my voice shaking. I have 2 years of research. I have hospital data. I have a working prototype that's already showing 95% accuracy in predicting. I don't care about your accuracy. He'd slammed his hand on the table, making all of us jump. I care that my daughter is about to ruin her life. Bastian, please. Mom had reached for his arm. No, Isolde. She needs to understand. Vela, I'm giving you a choice. A real choice. You can either give up this nonsense, keep your job, and build a real career like your sister has. He'd gestured to Maribel, who'd looked smug. Or you can chase this pipe dream. But if you choose the latter, you'll do it without this family's support. I'd stared at him. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. If you quit your job to pursue this company, you are choosing to walk away from this family. Bastian, Mom had gasped. I mean it, Isolde. He'd turned to her, and his face had been set like stone. We've coddled her long enough. Viola needs to learn that actions have consequences. If she wants to be an adult who makes adult decisions, fine, but she'll do it on her own. I'd felt my world tilting. You're saying if I take this funding, I can't come home? I'm saying if you take this funding, you need to live with your choice. All the way. No safety net, no running back here when it falls apart. It's not going to fall apart. Everyone thinks that, Maribel had snapped. God, Vela, why can't you just be realistic for once? I'd looked at my sister, at her successful career, her nice apartment, her wine, her smug satisfaction, and I'd seen my future if I listened to them. Safe, small, bitter. Because being realistic in this family means being small, I'd said quietly. Maribel's face had gone red. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time anyone in this family did something big, something risky, something that mattered beyond a paycheck and a title? How dare you! Enough! Dad's voice had cracked like thunder. Viola, I'm not negotiating. You have a choice. Your family or this company. I'd felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I'd refused to let them fall. That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. Call it what you want. What's it going to be? I'd looked at Mom, silently begging her to intervene, but she'd just sat there, hands twisted in her lap, saying nothing. I'd looked at Maribel, hoping for, I don't know, sisterhood? Understanding? But she'd just raised her wine glass to her lips. Viola. Dad's voice had been cold now. Final. Decide. Now. And I had. I choose MedPredict, I'd whispered. The silence that followed was the kind that marks the end of something. The end of childhood, maybe. Or family. Or both. Dad had nodded once. Then pack your things. You have an hour. Bastian, it's Christmas Eve. Mom had started. I don't care what day it is. She made her choice. She can live with it. I'd stood there, frozen, waiting for someone to say this was crazy, that we could talk about it, that family didn't do this to each other, but no one said anything. So I'd gone upstairs and packed. 1 suitcase, clothes, laptop, the few things that mattered. My hands had been shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. When I'd come back down, they were all in the living room. Not talking, just sitting there like they were waiting for a funeral to start. I'm ready, I'd said. Dad had walked to the door and opened it. Snow had blown in and the temperature was dropping fast. The weather report had said 15 degrees by midnight. Goodbye, Viola. I'd dragged my suitcase to the door, stopped, turned back. I love you, I'd said. All of you. And I'm sorry you can't see what I'm trying to build, but I hope someday you will." No one had responded. I'd walked out into the snow. The door had closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. My car had been parked at the curb. I'd thrown my suitcase in the back seat and climbed behind the wheel. Turned the key. Nothing. The battery was dead, killed by the cold. I'd tried again and again. Nothing. The temperature was 15 degrees. I had no money for a hotel. I'd just quit my job and my savings were going into the company. My phone was at 12% battery. I'd called Mom. No answer. Called Maribel. Straight to voicemail. The snow had been falling heavier now, and the cold was seeping through the car's thin walls. I'd wrapped myself in every piece of clothing I'd packed, climbed into the back seat, and tried to stay warm. That was how I'd spent Christmas Eve 2022, shivering in the back of a dead car, watching the lights in my childhood home glow warm through the snow, wondering if this was what it felt like to die of cold. I didn't die, obviously. Around 3 a.m., the cold had gotten bad enough that I'd walked to a 24-hour gas station 2 miles away, used their bathroom to warm up, bought a coffee with my last $5, sat in a plastic chair until morning when a tow truck could jump my car. I'd driven back to Boston on Christmas Day, started my new life, and I never looked back. The living room was completely silent when I finished telling the story. Mom had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Maribel was staring at the floor. Dad had gone very pale. "You didn't go to a hotel," Mom whispered. "I couldn't afford one. You slept in your car, in 15-degree weather." "Yes. You could have died. You could have—" Her voice broke. "I didn't. Obviously. We thought—" She couldn't finish. "You thought I went to a friend's place or a hotel or somewhere safe," I said, because thinking that was easier than admitting you'd thrown your daughter out into a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. Bastian finally spoke, his voice rough. "That's not— We didn't mean— You told me to leave. Those were your exact words. Pack your things. You have an hour. What did you think was going to happen?" "I thought you'd come to your senses." His voice rose. "I thought you'd realize how insane you were being and give up this ridiculous idea." "And when I didn't? When I actually left? Did you even check if I was okay?" Silence. "You didn't, did you? You just let me go." My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out. 7 missed calls from Cole. 12 texts. The board was panicking. Investors were calling. The media was everywhere. I silenced it again. "I need to ask you all something," I said quietly. They looked at me. If CNN hadn't revealed my identity tonight, if I had shown up here as the same struggling daughter you thought I was, would this conversation be happening? No one answered. Would you have believed me if I'd told you over dinner that I was a billionaire? That I'd built a company worth $3.6 billion? That hospitals were using my algorithm to save lives? Mom shook her head slowly. I don't know." "Yes, you do. You wouldn't have believed me. You'd have thought I was exaggerating or delusional or lying, just like you did 3 years ago." I stood up. "You only believe me now because CNN told you to." "That's not fair," Maribel started. "Isn't it?" I turned to her. "When I told you at dinner I was working with hospitals, what did you say? You asked if it was freelance. You made it sound small, insignificant, because that's what you needed me to be." Maribel's face crumpled. That's not—" She stopped, started again. "Okay. You want the truth? Please. I told Dad to kick you out." The words landed like bombs. "What?" Mom breathed. Maribel looked at me, tears spilling over. "That night, 3 years ago, when you said you got the funding, I pulled Dad aside before the big conversation, and I told him that if he let you do this, you'd embarrass the family, that you needed tough love, that making you choose between the family and the company would force you to see reason." "Maribel!" Mom looked horrified. "I was jealous." Maribel's voice broke. "Okay, I was so goddamn jealous I could barely breathe. You were always the smart one, the special one. Things just clicked for you while I studied 16 hours a day just to keep up. And then you said you were going to build something in healthcare, actually save people's lives, while I was just a lawyer who helps rich people sue other rich people. I couldn't stand it. She wiped her eyes roughly. So I convinced Dad that kicking you out was the right thing to do. I told him you'd come crawling back, that you'd fail and realize we were right, and then I could still be the successful daughter. The room spun. You manipulated him, I said slowly. Yes. You made him throw me out because you were jealous. Yes. She was sobbing now. And I've regretted it every single day since. But I was too proud to admit it, too ashamed to fix it. I looked at Dad. Did you know this? His face was gray. Not exactly. She told me she was worried about you, that she thought you needed structure. I made the decision on my own, based on her lies, based on my own fears, he admitted. Maribel just reinforced what I already believed, that you were making a mistake. And you, Mom? I turned to Isolde. Where were you in all this? She flinched. I wanted to stop it. I wanted to, but you didn't. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't. Why not? She looked at Bastian, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was steady for the first time that night. Because 30 years ago, I was you. The words hung in the air like crystals of ice, sharp and glittering. Isolde Moore stood up slowly, her hands clasped in front of her like she was about to confess something in church. In a way, I suppose she was. I wanted to be a doctor, she said. Bastian's head snapped toward her. Isolde, no! Her voice was firmer than I'd ever heard it. She needs to know. They all need to know. She took a breath and looked directly at me. When I was 23, I got accepted to Johns Hopkins Medical School. Full scholarship. I'd taken the MCAT 3 times to get a score high enough. Volunteered at hospitals. Done everything right. And they accepted me. My mother had gotten into Johns Hopkins, one of the best medical schools in the country. I'd never told anyone this, Mom continued. I was going to surprise your father. We'd been dating for a year. I thought he'd be excited, that we'd figure it out together. What did he say? I asked quietly. She looked at Bastian and something painful passed between them. He said, a wife's place is at home. Doctors don't have time for families. You have to choose me or medicine. The room went very still. That's not exactly, Dad started. That's exactly what you said. Mom's voice didn't rise, but it cut clean through his protest, word for word. I remember because I replayed it in my head for the next 30 years. Maribel looked between them, shocked. Mom, you never... I never told you because I was ashamed that I chose him, ashamed that I gave up my dream because a 25-year-old man told me to. She turned back to me. So when you came home that night 3 years ago, so excited about your funding, I saw myself at 23, and I knew what your father was going to do because he'd done it to me. Isolde, that's not fair. Fair? She laughed, bitter and sharp. Nothing about any of this is fair, Bastian. I should have left with her. When you threw our daughter out into a snowstorm, I should have grabbed my coat and followed her, but I didn't. Tears were streaming down her face now. I didn't because 30 years ago I made my choice, and some part of me, some ugly, bitter part of me, thought if I had to sacrifice my dreams, why shouldn't she? The confession broke something in the room. The last pretense of the perfect Moore family shattered on the floor next to the wine stain. Mom, I said softly, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. I never told you. I became a teacher instead. Elementary school. It's fine. It's a good career. Respectable. Safe. She said the word like it tasted like poison. But every time you talked about your dreams, your big, impossible ideas, I felt something twist inside me. Because you were so much braver than I ever was. That's why you didn't stop him from throwing me out. Yes. She covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry. I'm so deeply, unforgivably sorry. I should have protected you, and instead I let history repeat itself because I was a coward. I didn't know what to say. How do you respond when your mother confesses she sacrificed you on the altar of her own regrets? My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out. Cole again, but this time with a message that made my stomach drop. Cole. Vela, the board called emergency meeting. They're threatening vote of no confidence if you don't release statement within the hour. WSJ is running story about vanishing founder. This is serious. I closed my eyes. Of course, my absence, my silence. It looked like I was hiding, running from responsibility. I need to make a call, I said. Now? Dad asked. We're in the middle of… Yes, now. Because unlike this family, my company can't wait 3 years to have difficult conversations. I walked to the kitchen, away from their voices, and called Cole. He answered on the first ring. Thank God. Where are you? Vermont? At my parents' house. The place that just got swarmed by every news outlet in New England? Yeah, I saw. Vela, we have a situation. I know. Tell the board I'll make a statement tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. press conference. They want it tonight. Tomorrow. That's not negotiable, Cole. I need… My voice cracked slightly. I need tonight. There was a pause. Cole had been with me since Series A. He knew me better than almost anyone. Okay, he said softly. Tomorrow. But Vela, whatever you're dealing with there, don't let them make you small again. Something in my chest loosened. I won't. Good. Call me if you need extraction. I can have a car there in an hour. Thanks, Cole. I hung up and leaned against the counter, letting myself have one moment, just one, to feel the weight of everything. The company crisis, the family revelation, the reporters outside, the 3 years of silence finally breaking open like an infected wound. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Vila! I turned. Bastian stood in the kitchen doorway, and he looked older than he had an hour ago. Smaller somehow. Can we talk? He asked. Just the two of us? I almost said no, almost walked past him, grabbed my bag, and left. But something in his face stopped me. Okay. We didn't go far, just to his office at the back of the house. The same office where he'd done taxes for 30 years, where he'd built his careful, controlled life. He closed the door behind us and gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. I sat. He remained standing, looking out the window at the reporters still camped outside. When you were 8 years old, he said finally, you corrected my math on a client's tax return. I remembered. The Morrison account. You'd transposed 2 numbers. You were 8. You just walked past my desk, glanced at the papers, and immediately spotted an error I'd missed after checking 3 times. That mistake would have cost my client $15,000. I remember you got angry. I did. He turned to face me. Do you know why? Because I made you look bad? No. Because in that moment, I realized you were smarter than me. My 8-year-old daughter was already better at my job than I was, and it terrified me. I stared at him. Every year after that, you pulled further ahead. You learned programming when you were 12. You taught yourself calculus when you were 14 because you were bored in regular math. You got into MIT. He sat down heavily in his chair. And every year I felt smaller and smaller next to you. Dad, let me finish, please. He rubbed his face. When you came home that night 3 years ago and told us about MedPredict, about the funding, about your plans to build something that would revolutionize healthcare, I didn't doubt you could do it. You said it was impossible. I said that because I was terrified you would do it. Because then what would I be? Bastian Moore, small-town accountant whose daughter changed the world while he counted other people's money? The confession sat between us like a living thing. You threw me out because you were afraid I'd succeed. Yes. The single word was devastating in its simplicity. I couldn't find words big enough for what that was. That's incredibly messed up. I know. You sabotaged your own daughter's life because of your ego. Yes. I slept in my car, Dad. I nearly froze. I spent 3 years building something extraordinary while you told everyone I was a failure. And you did it because you couldn't handle the idea that I might be better than you? He flinched. When you say it like that, how else should I say it? My voice was rising now, 3 years of hurt finally finding its voice. You threw me away. You made me choose between my family and my future. And when I chose my future, you punished me for it. You told the neighbors I was struggling. You didn't answer my calls. You let me think I was alone in the world because you were too insecure to be proud of me. I know, his voice cracked. I know, and I'm sorry. God, Vela, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I let my own inadequacy destroy our relationship. I threw away 3 years with my daughter because I was a coward. Tears were running down his face now. I'd never seen my father cry before. You built an empire, he said. You saved thousands of lives. You became everything I was afraid you'd become. And you did it all without me. He looked at me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I need you to know. I see you now. Really see you. And I am in awe of who you've become. I wanted to stay angry. Anger was safe, clean, simple. But looking at this broken man in front of me, this man who'd let his fears poison everything, I felt something more complicated than rage, pity maybe, or grief for what could have been. I'm leaving tonight, I said. I have to be in Boston by morning. Will you? He stopped, started again. Will you ever come back? I don't know. What can I do? Tell me what I can do to fix this. I stood up. You can't fix 3 years in one conversation, Dad. You can't undo what you did, but if you want any chance at a relationship with me going forward, you need to do something you've never done before. What? Ask me about my life. Not about the company or the money or the CNN report. About me. Who I am now. What my days are like. What makes me happy. What scares me. What I dream about. See me as a person, not as a reflection of your failures. He nodded slowly. I can do that. I will do that. We'll see. I walked to the door, then stopped. Dad? Yes? That algorithm that saves lives, the one that predicts cardiac events with 98.7% accuracy, I built the core of it in the back of my car, that first night, when I couldn't sleep because I was too cold and too scared and too hurt. I looked back at him. I turned the worst night of my life into something that saves other people. That's who I am. I hope someday you can be proud of that. I left him there and went back to the living room. Mom and Maribel were sitting on the couch, not talking, not looking at each other. They looked up when I entered. I'm leaving, I announced. Now? Mom stood up. But it's only... I have a company to run, a crisis to manage. And honestly, I've had about all the family reconciliation I can handle for one night. Maribel stood too. Phyla, wait. Can I... She pulled out her phone, fingers shaking slightly as she typed something. This is my number, my personal cell. Not the work one you probably have. I know you have no reason to use it, but if you ever need anything. Legal help or just someone to talk to or... She stopped, looking helpless. Thank you, I said, taking the paper she'd scribbled on. Mom approached slowly like I was a wild animal that might bolt. Will you call? Eventually. Eventually. But Mom, I need you to understand something. I'm not ready to forgive. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. Her face crumpled with relief. That's more than we deserve. It is. She reached out, then stopped. Can I hug you? I hesitated. Then, because some part of me still remembered being a child who ran to her mother for comfort, I nodded. Her arms around me felt familiar and foreign all at once. She smelled like cinnamon and wine and regret. I'm proud of you, she whispered into my hair. I should have said that 3 years ago, every day for 3 years, but I'm saying it now. I'm so proud of you, baby. I let her hold me for exactly 10 seconds. Then I gently pulled away. I need to go pack. Upstairs, my childhood bedroom looked exactly as I'd left it. The bed with the purple comforter, the desk where I'd learned to code, the bookshelf full of fantasy novels about girls who saved the world. I grabbed my overnight bag and threw my things in. It took less than 5 minutes. I'd gotten good at packing quickly over the years. Hotels, conferences, hospitals, tours, always moving, never quite landing. When I came back downstairs, all 3 of them were waiting by the door. Even Dad had emerged from his office, his eyes red. "The reporters," Mom said nervously. "There are so many." "I'll handle it." "Let me come with you," Dad offered. "To the car, at least." "No." My voice was firm, but not unkind. "You lost that right 3 years ago. But thank you for offering." Maribel grabbed her coat. "I'm coming anyway. Not to the car, just to the door, to run interference." I didn't argue. We walked to the front door together. Through the window, I could see the crowd had grown. Maybe 50 people now. News vans, neighbors, curious onlookers, all of them waiting for me. "Ready?" Maribel asked. "No, but let's go anyway." She opened the door. The explosion of sound was immediate, camera flashes like lightning, voices shouting over each other. "Ms. Moore! Viola, over here! Is it true you slept in your car?" That last one stopped me cold. Someone had already dug into my history. Of course they had. Maribel stepped forward, her lawyer voice cutting through the chaos. "Folks, please step back. Ms. Moore will be making a formal statement tomorrow morning. Tonight, respect our family's privacy." But they kept pushing, kept shouting. I saw Harper Bennett in the crowd, phone raised. Judge Sullivan standing on his lawn across the street. Tyler Washington from CNN with his microphone extended. I could run to my car. I could hide my face and leave. But I'd spent 3 years building a company on the principle of transparency, of truth-telling, of making the invisible visible. I'd built algorithms that revealed hidden dangers before they became fatal. Maybe it was time to extend that same transparency to my own life. I stepped forward onto the porch, raised one hand. The crowd quieted slightly. "I'll say this once," I said. My voice was steady, clear. "My name is Vela Moore. I'm the founder of MedPredict. I kept my identity private to protect my team and maintain focus on the work, not the personality behind it." Cameras flashed. As for my family, I glanced back at Mom, Dad, and Maribel standing in the doorway. Every family has complicated history. We're working through ours. That's all you need to know. "But Ms. Moore," a reporter started, "that's all for tonight. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'll be holding a press conference in Boston. Save your questions for then. Now, please." I looked around at all of them, at the neighbors I'd known since childhood, at the reporters who'd driven through the snow to get this story. Please let my family have their Christmas. Something in my voice must have reached them. Or maybe they were just cold. Either way, the crowd began to disperse. Slowly, reluctantly, but they dispersed. Tyler Washington caught my eye as he walked back to his van. He nodded once, a gesture of respect, or maybe recognition. One professional to another. I walked to my car, not running, not hiding, just walking. Behind me, I heard Dad's voice. "She handled that better than I would have." And Maribel. "She handles everything better than we do." I put my bag in the trunk of my Tesla, took one last look at the house. Mom stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the warm light behind her. She raised one hand in goodbye, or maybe forgiveness, or maybe just hope. I got in the car and started the engine. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw them in my rearview mirror. Bastian with his hand on Isolde's shoulder. Maribel standing slightly apart, arms wrapped around herself. The 3 of them watching me leave, just like they had 3 years ago. But this time, I wasn't running. I was choosing. The drive to Boston took 3 hours. 3 hours of darkness and snow and empty highway. 3 hours to process everything that had been said and unsaid. My phone buzzed with messages. Cole. Statement draft attached. Legal approved. Comms team ready. Board member Chin. We support you. Take your time. Dr. Nina Cross, Denver ICU. Saw the news. You saved my patient's life yesterday. Thank you for existing. That last one made me pull over at a rest stop and cry for the first time all night. I arrived at the MedPredict offices at 2:47 a.m. The building was lit up. My team was still there, still working, still holding everything together while I dealt with my family drama. Cole met me in the lobby. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "You okay?" he asked. "No." "Fair enough. Coffee?" God, yes. We rode the elevator to the executive floor. Through the glass walls, I could see engineers at their desks, data scientists reviewing models, our head of hospital relations on the phone with someone in California. "They didn't go home," I said. "Of course not. You're not the only one who cares about this company, Viola. We all built it together." We went to my office, a simple space with a standing desk, 3 monitors, and a window overlooking the Charles River. Cole had left a thermos of coffee and a folder marked Press Conference, 10 a.m. "I'll let you prep," he said. "But Viola, for what it's worth, what you built, what we all built together, it matters. More than family drama, more than CNN, more than any of it. We're saving lives. Don't let them make you forget that." "I won't." He left. I sat at my desk and opened the folder. Statement drafts, talking points, Q&A prep, crisis communication protocols. My phone buzzed. An email this time from an address I didn't recognize. ymore1969@gmail.com mom. The subject line was just, "I'm sorry isn't enough, but it's a start." I almost deleted it. Almost. Instead, I opened it. "Vela, it's 2 a.m. I can't sleep. Your father is in his office. He can't sleep either. Maribel left an hour ago, but texted that she's awake too. I think we're all just sitting in our separate spaces, realizing what we did to you. After you left tonight, I told your father I'm going back to school. I'm 56 years old, and I'm going to finish my pre-med requirements. I won't become a doctor. That ship sailed 30 years ago. But I'll become something. For me. You showed me tonight that it's never too late to stop living someone else's version of your life. I don't know if you'll ever forgive us, but I hope someday I can become a mother worthy of your forgiveness. I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 years ago. Every day for 3 years. But I'm saying it now. I'm so, so proud of you, baby. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I saved it to a folder I'd been keeping for 3 years, the one titled Voicemails I Can't Delete. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But I didn't delete it either. At 5 a.m., I called the team together for a quick meeting. 15 exhausted but determined faces on the conference room screen. We'd grown too fast to fit everyone in one physical space anymore. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "At 10 a.m., I'm going to stand in front of 200 reporters and tell our story. Not my personal story. They don't get that. Our story. About why MedPredict exists. About the lives we've saved. About the future we're building." "What about your family?" someone asked. "The rumors?" "My family is complicated. Most families are. But that's not what matters. What matters is that right now, somewhere in the country, our algorithm is flagging a patient who's about to crash. A doctor is getting an alert that will save a life. That's what matters. That's what I'm going to talk about." Nods around the screen. "So let's get to work." At 9:47 a.m., I stood backstage at the Boston Convention Center. Cole stood next to me, adjusting my microphone. "Navy suit was a good choice," he said. "Professional, but not corporate. You picked it out." "I know, I'm excellent." He smiled, then turned serious. "You don't have to do this. We could send out a written statement. No, I need to do this. Not for them. For me." Through the curtain, I could hear the crowd. Hundreds of reporters, cameras, the whole world watching. 30 seconds, a production assistant said. I took a breath. Thought about the little girl who used to code in her bedroom. The college student who dreamed of changing healthcare, the 27-year-old who slept in her car and refused to quit, the 30-year-old who built an empire while her family thought she was failing. All the versions of myself that led to this moment. "Ready," I said. The assistant counted down. 3, 2, 1. The curtain opened. I walked onto the stage. 200 faces turned toward me. Cameras flashed. The room fell silent. I stepped up to the podium and looked out at them. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Vela Moore. I'm the founder and CEO of MedPredict. Many of you have questions about why I kept my identity private for 3 years. I'm here to answer them." I paused, letting the moment breathe. "But first, I want to tell you a different story. It's the story of a 6-year-old girl in Denver named Sophie. Last Tuesday, Sophie was admitted to the ICU with complications from pneumonia. She was stable, her vitals looked good. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. I pulled up a slide, a graph showing Sophie's case. At 3:47 a.m., MedPredict flagged Sophie's case. Our algorithm detected a pattern in her blood work and vitals that indicated she was 12 hours away from septic shock. The doctors hadn't seen it yet. The traditional monitoring systems hadn't caught it. But our algorithm did. Another slide. By 4 a.m., Sophie was on antibiotics. By noon, the danger had passed. This morning, she went home with her parents. I looked directly into the camera. Sophie is alive because of the technology my team built. And Sophie is one of more than 10,000 people who are alive today because of MedPredict. I switched to the next slide, a timeline. 3 years ago, I had a choice. I could pursue a safe, stable career that made everyone comfortable, or I could chase an impossible dream that terrified everyone, including me. My voice was steady, strong. I chose the dream, and that choice cost me. It cost me my family, my home, my sense of security. For a while, it cost me almost everything. I looked out at the reporters. But I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing it because someone out there is sitting at a table right now, being told their dream is too big, too risky, too impossible. Someone out there is being asked to choose between who they are and who their family wants them to be. I leaned forward slightly. To that person, I want to say this: you are not too much. Your dreams are not too big. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the people who love you will not understand you until you prove them wrong. A pause. So, prove them wrong, not to hurt them, but to save yourself. Because the world needs your impossible dreams. I looked directly into the camera again. The world needs you to fly. The room was completely silent. "Now," I said, "who has questions?" 300 hands shot up. I smiled for the first time all morning. "Let's start with you." I pointed to a woman in the front row. "What would you like to know?" 6 months later. The phone rang at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I was in my apartment in Boston, halfway through my second coffee, reviewing quarterly reports. "Vila Moore speaking." "Vila." Mom's voice, but different, stronger somehow. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "It's fine, I'm up." We'd been talking once a week since Christmas, careful conversations at first, tentative and awkward, but slowly, painfully, honestly, we were building something new. "I wanted to tell you," she said. "I finished my first semester, anatomy and physiology, chemistry, medical ethics. I got straight A's." Something warm bloomed in my chest. "Mom, that's incredible. I'm 56 years old and sitting in lectures with 22-year-olds. It's terrifying and wonderful. I'm proud of you." She was quiet for a moment. "That means everything. Coming from you. How's Dad?" "He's trying. He asks about you every day, reads every article about MedPredict, bores people at his golf club talking about my daughter, the CEO." A pause. "I think he's finally learning to be proud without feeling threatened." "That's progress." "It is. Slow, but real." Another pause. "Vila, I was wondering, would you want to come home for Thanksgiving? No pressure. I know you're busy, but the invitation stands." I looked out my window at the Charles River, at the city I'd built my life in, at the freedom I'd fought so hard for. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take your time. We'll be here." After we hung up, I sat with my coffee and thought about family, about forgiveness, about the long, slow work of rebuilding trust. My phone buzzed. A text from Maribel. New case, environmental law, pro bono. Thought you'd be proud. Followed by a screenshot of a news article about her taking on a major corporation for illegally dumping waste. I smiled and texted back, very proud. Go save the world, sis. Another text came in, this time from Cole. Hospital in Seattle just signed. That's 500. We hit 500 hospitals, V. Half 1,000. Me. Sophie would be proud. Cole. Sophie is alive. That's what matters. I set down my phone and opened my laptop, pulled up the latest algorithm refinements. We were close to expanding into stroke prediction, another frontier, another impossible dream. My inbox had an email from Dad. Subject line, saw this, thought of you. It was a New York Times article, The Quiet Revolutionaries, How Female Founders Are Changing Tech. Below the link, just 2 words from Bastian Moore. That's you. Not perfect, not healed, but trying. I closed the laptop and looked around my apartment, small, efficient, mine. The walls were covered with photos now, my team, hospital visits, the time we rang the bell at NASDAQ, a life built on my own terms. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet, was a printout, something I'd found while going through old files from that first terrible year. It was a note I'd written to myself on Christmas morning 2022, sitting in that gas station at 3 a.m. If you're reading this and you haven't quit yet, you made it. You survived, and that means you can survive anything. Keep going. The world needs what you're building, even if your family can't see it yet. I'd survived, more than survived. I'd flown, and below that old note, I'd recently added something new, written in my own hand just last week. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the past write your future. They hurt you, they were wrong, and you built something beautiful anyway. That's the real victory. I poured myself a third coffee. Terrible habit. But I was a CEO now. I was allowed terrible habits. And opened my email to respond to my father. Dad, thanks for sending. You're right. That's me. That's also hundreds of other women who refused to be small. I'm thinking about Thanksgiving. I'll let you know. Also, Mom told me about her grades. You should take her somewhere special to celebrate. She's doing something brave. V. I hit send and returned to my quarterly reports. Outside, Boston was waking up. Somewhere in the city, in hospitals and I See Us, MedPredict was humming quietly in the background, catching the things humans missed, flagging the dangers before they became tragedies. Saving lives, just like I'd promised it would 3 years ago in a cold car on Christmas Eve. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. This is Sophie's mom, from Denver. Dr. Cross gave me your email. I just wanted to say thank you. Sophie is 7 now. She's alive because of you. We'll never forget that. Merry early Christmas. I read it twice. Then I saved it in a folder titled, Why We Do This. And then I got back to work, because that's what you do when you're too big for the box they built for you. You don't shrink. You build something bigger,